The gavel had not even fallen yet, and tension was already thick in the room. Kody Brown was in the center of the courtroom, his shoulders braced, his jaw clenched, not as the patriarchal figure millions once knew him to be, but as an individual standing alone, preparing to fuel the most intimate war of his life. On the opposite side of the room, sitting apart but bound together in their fear, sat Christine, Janelle, and Meri, the women who had once shared a life with him, now his strongest adversaries. They each held their own folders, filled not with recollections, but with custody petitions, court documents, and shattered vows. Outside, cameras were clicking. The media sensed that something huge was in the making. Whispers had gone around for weeks, not another divorce or another troubled relationship, but something more sinister, something irreversible. No one, even Robyn, who now stood by Kody like a specter, anticipated the tempest that was about to break. It started with one movement. A fat stack of documents silently moved across the court clerk's desk. Kody Brown filed for sole legal custody of all remaining minor children from all his marriages. Not only his children with Robyn, not only the ones he still talked to. All of them, even the ones he hadn't called in months. Christine's eyes grew wide as the clerk read the motion. Her breath was caught in her throat. She blinked furiously, shocked into silence. Janelle's mouth dropped open, as though to say words she did not yet have. Meri just stared down, her hands shaking slightly, as she gripped her pen. Robyn grabbed for Kody's arm, not to reassure him, but as though to steady herself. This was more than a custody hearing. This was war, and the children, they weren't merely at the center of it. They were the battlefield. "He's trying to take my baby from me," Christine murmured under her breath. Nobody heard her but Janelle, whose hand instinctively extended toward her friend's shoulder. But the words lingered in the air like fog, growing thicker with each second. The judge walked in, face impassive, but his eyes swept the faces before him like a man about to walk through a minefield. He knew already, this was not going to be another celebrity row between family members. This was going to rock the court on its very foundation. As the hearing commenced, Kody's lawyer stood up and landed the first punch. "Mr. Brown will demonstrate the children's welfare has been time and again put at risk while in the care of their mothers. He wants stability, structure, and protection." Protection. That single word sliced through Christine like a blade. What had he ever protected them from? Himself? Janelle crept forward, brows furrowed. She didn't remember everything, but she recalled the skipped birthdays, the Christmas dinners where chairs sat empty, the lonely nights of soothing her sobbing children as to why their father didn't appear. And here he was, not to say sorry, but to reclaim them. What kind of father asks for full custody after walking away from half the childhoods? Keep watching. The truth is about to hit harder than anyone expected. Christine's lawyer asked for an immediate response. The judge denied it. "You'll have your time. For now, let Mr. Brown speak." Let him speak? The court hushed. Kody stood up. He nipped at his tie, the same tie he wore in a family photo more than 10 years before. The irony was not lost on anyone. His tone was steady at first. Practice. He told them that he loved his kids, that he was afraid for their mental health, that the mothers had poisoned them against him. Gasps filled the courtroom. Christine let her pen fall. Meri squirmed. Janelle shook her head, slowly, and looked down. The press gallery wrote furiously. But Kody wasn't finished. He informed the judge that the children were subjected to toxic emotional environments and vindictive narratives, that the only way they would ever heal was with his guidance, with his structure. His structure. The same structure that broke this family apart in the first place. Christine's face was white. Her fists were clenched tight, knuckles white. She wasn't crying. Not yet. She'd wait until the pain could no longer be concealed behind her eyes. Meri looked toward the back of the courtroom, where two of the older children sat silently. One had tears in her eyes. The other just looked tired. Tired of being fought over like property. Tired of pretending their voices didn't matter. The judge nodded and thanked Kody. "We'll hear from the mothers next." The hearing recessed for lunch. The corridor swirled with whispers. Christine pulled Janelle into a side room and collapsed. "He's taking this all the way. He's not bluffing." "No," Janelle replied. "He's not." Back in the courtroom, one child walked up to the bench, quietly, unnoticed by the cameras. They gave a sealed envelope to the bailiff. No one saw it happen, except the judge. He read the name on the envelope and hesitated. It wasn't meant for him. It was addressed to the person who still cares. And that was the moment the entire courtroom story began to shift. A secret voice entering the battle without a single spoken word. What would drive a child to write to a judge, instead of speaking out loud? Why did Kody want them all? And what was he hiding behind the smile? We're just getting started. Subscribe, stay with us, and tell us in the comments, what would you do if your ex attempted to take sole custody of your kids after leaving your life? We want to hear your story, because this isn't Kody's struggle anymore. It's a tale about every child stuck in the middle of broken adults. It began like most conflicts do, hushed, not with a shriek or a door slammed in rage, but with a sealed letter handed to the courthouse at dawn. Between its covers were pages that had the power to change the lives of people. No camera crews were taping yet, no reporters swarming the sidewalk, just a man pushing through the rain, suit wet, with the legal equivalent of a grenade. That individual was Kody Brown, and in that envelope was his plea to be granted full legal custody of all remaining minor children common between him and his previous wives. No one had expected this, not even Robyn, standing in the darkness just behind him, her arms wrapped tightly around her chest, as if she might hold her world together by sheer force of will. Her silence spoke volumes more than Kody's self-assured strides ever had. She was anxious, perhaps afraid, perhaps guilty, but not innocent. Christine received the news in a text message. A paralegal who worked in the courthouse sent her one sentence. He filed. That's it. She didn't answer. Her hands started to tremble. She was standing in the kitchen, the same kitchen where her little daughter used to ask, "Why does Daddy not visit anymore?" The same kitchen where she had wept, alone, countless nights after the cameras stopped rolling and nobody was looking. And now, after all this, after all the abandonment and estrangement, Kody was suing to gain control of her children. Pain was second, disbelief was first. Janelle was in her garden when she received the call. She didn't let the phone fall. She didn't scream. She just turned to the wind, as if to listen to something farther away in the distance. A reason perhaps, or a warning. But there was nothing. Just quiet and earth and the talk of time, pilfered without leave. Meri was the last to find out. That had been a habit. Always last to find out. Always left behind. But when she finally heard it, she didn't weep. She gazed out of her window and muttered, "He wouldn't dare." But he did. The day of the hearing arrived soon. Too soon. There had not been time to absorb it, only respond. Christine hadn't slept at all. Janelle had already consulted 2 lawyers. Meri, for the first time in many years, contacted both of them and told them she wanted in. Not just to watch. Not just to be there. She wanted to fight. The courthouse was ringed with reporters when they arrived. Kody naturally was in a suit. Dark blue, crisply pressed with a maroon tie, the same one he had sported in the previous family reunion photo before it all fell apart. His face was stone, but behind his eyes was something more difficult to define. Conviction? Desperation? Strategy? Perhaps all of the above. Christine showed up last, her hair pulled back. No makeup. She wasn't there to perform. She was there to protect. Janelle and Meri waited near the courthouse entrance. The 3 women didn't speak, but their eyes locked. They didn't have to say it out loud. We're in this together. Within the courtroom, there was too much silence. The sort of silence that rings in your ears. The judge, a woman in her 50s, sat down. Her eyes scanned the room, lingering only for a moment on Kody and then on the line of women sitting to his right. No jury today. Only law. Only testimony. Only history about to be rewritten. Kody's lawyer went first. Assertive, rehearsed. He presented the case like a sharpened sword. Kody was fighting for sole custody of the young children due to what he termed a pattern of emotional instability in the families of Christine, Janelle, and Meri. He testified regarding erratic schedules, toxic narratives, and alienation from the father. Kody nodded, his face grave as if affirming the tragedy of it all. Christine's breath caught in her throat. The words were poison in the air. Toxic? Erratic? She had stayed up during fevers. She had taught them to walk, to speak, to love. While Kody was running towards new beginnings, she had kept the endings intact. How do you remain quiet when someone redefines your motherhood as an error? Janelle braced forward, knuckles clenching around her skirt. She wished to scream, to toss something, to make the court see the text messages, the missed calls, the forgotten birthdays. But her time would come. It had to. Meri sat rigidly, gazing at Kody. The man she had loved now stood like a stranger, attempting to remove not only children but the years she had given for them. And then arrived the first shock. Kody provided surveillance video, ring camera videos, edited social media clips, even intimate text conversations he had saved somehow. His lawyer said it showed parental manipulation by the mothers, who allegedly coached the children to reject Kody unfairly. Christine gasped. She knew a clip, one from her own family room. A moment that her daughter had been sobbing about a call that didn't connect with Kody. The clip was distorted, edited so she appeared as if she was instigating the grief, not soothing it. Janelle's jaw tightened. Meri muttered under her breath, "How low will he go?" The judge did not blink. She requested that all unedited footage be brought to her. She threatened Kody's lawyer that selective editing would not be allowed. Kody scowled, like the court was not being cooperative with his story. The harder he worked at appearing the hero, the more truth got away. Then slowly, like a dam ready to burst, the courtroom door creaked open. It was Robyn. She hadn't spoken all morning, hadn't made a statement, but now she stepped inside and sat behind Kody. Not beside him, behind. She didn't touch his shoulder, didn't smile, just watched, quietly, like a witness to a fire she didn't know how to put out. Christine noticed, Janelle noticed, even the judge noticed. Lunch recess had been called. As everyone was exiting, one of the court clerks came up to the bench and handed the judge a sealed envelope. No one witnessed who had delivered it. The judge took a look at it, stopped and discreetly inserted it into her folder. In the hall outside, Christine slumped against the wall. Janelle jumped to her side. "We won't let him do this," she whispered. Christine wiped her face. "He's not trying to win just custody," she said, shaking voice. "He's trying to wipe us out." Janelle assisted her to her feet. "So we remind him who we are." The judge opened the envelope inside. It was in pencil. 5 paragraphs. Careful, neat handwriting. No signature signed. Just a closing sentence. "Please don't make me live with him. I'm not safe." The court was quiet when Kody came back from the recess. He entered slowly, face impassive, but his attitude tense, as if burdened with something heavier than papers. Christine regarded him intently now, not like a person examining an adversary, but like a person attempting to identify a specter of the person she used to know. There was something wrong in his eyes, a quivering twitch in the corner of his mouth. Perhaps it was the envelope. Perhaps it was the words of the child that now rested heavily in the judge's folder. But Kody didn't glance at Christine. He didn't glance at any of them. Not even Robyn, who quietly resumed the bench, hands clasped together in her lap like a schoolgirl hoping to be called upon. She too had avoided eye contact. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. The judge brought the room to order. Kody's lawyer stood up once more, zipped up his suit, and began with the opening of their official presentation. This time it wasn't about generic accusations or footage with the parts cut out. It was about character, perception, fear. He began listing examples of instability. Christine's multiple moves, Janelle's so-called financial unpredictability, Meri's emotional distance and periods of isolation, all painted like red flags, all tied together under the thread that Kody, as the only unified parental figure, should be given exclusive custody to give the children a chance at rebuilding a safe and structured life. Christine did not flinch. She sat unmoving, her face locked in horror. Each statement stung. She longed to yell that she moved to keep her children safe, that she worked double shifts, sold pieces of furniture, skipped meals some evenings, all to offer them stability. She said nothing. Janelle folded her arms, her jaw set. She had heard Kody talk this way before, privately, behind doors, in the subtlest intonations of a man who thought that whatever he said had to be true because he was the one speaking. The judge nodded along, but refused to interrupt. She stood there waiting, like a spectator at a game of chess. Kody was subpoenaed to testify. He stood upright. He swore, then sat back with his shoulders hunched, regarding the judge as though she were a mirror in which he dared hope to see a reflection he could master. He began tentatively, as though he was attempting to sound hurt. He claimed he never planned to seek custody until it got, in his own terms, dangerous. He said he hadn't talked to some of the children in months because the mothers would not permit it, that they would block his calls, that they instilled disrespect. He said one of his daughters bluntly told him that she hated him, and that Christine just sat there and didn't say a word. He glared at Christine when he said that, and that was the first time her mask slipped. Her breathing caught, her eyes pricked, not because she was in the wrong, but because she recalled the moment. She recalled that night, and she recalled saying something, just not the portion Kody wished recalled. He went on. He reported Janelle's home lacked firm rules, that the kids could skip virtual class without punishment, that he once discovered that a child had been grounded for a week, not for violating a rule, but for not telling their mother "I love you." Gasp ran through the courtroom. Janelle growled under her breath. That's a lie. Her attorney placed a soothing hand on her shoulder. Kody stated he did not want to discipline the mothers, that he simply wanted his children to be able to live in peace, and only he could give that. He had his hand in his jacket, and out came a letter. A handwritten letter, he said, from one of the younger children. The judge's eyebrow shot up. He said the letter had been written 2 years before, that it read, "I miss Dad. I wish we lived with him." The judge wanted to see the original. Kody hesitated. He didn't have it, just a scanned version. And suddenly the atmosphere in the room shifted. Something changed. Christine's lawyer rose to his feet. He requested to come forward to the bench. A short, muffled exchange ensued. The judge nodded. She turned to Kody. "Mr. Brown, original documents will be required by this court from now on. Anything else will not be accepted as evidence." Kody seemed stunned. His lawyer murmured something in his ear. He nodded slowly, then looked back towards Robyn, but she was gazing down at her hands, fingers crossed, trembling. The judge asked Kody one last question before dismissing him. "Have you ever struck any of your children?" Kody furrowed his brow. Then he looked offended. "Of course not. Yelled at them in a way that caused distress. I raised my voice, but I never hurt. Did any of them ever report that they were afraid of you?" Silence. Christine watched him hard. So did Janelle. So did the kids in the back row. He sat there in silence. The judge excused him. Christine was next to be called to the stand. She walked slowly, each step a weight. She had no makeup on. She was not in TV clothes. She was a mother struggling to keep her family together with shaky hands. She was sworn in. Her voice was gentle but distinct. She started by painting a picture of mornings when she woke up at 5 to prepare breakfast for 6 children herself. Of evenings where she walked the hallway with fevers, earaches, nightmares. Of birthdays spent breaking the news, why Daddy didn't call. She told that she did not train her children to despise Kody. She told that she had been covering for him for years, making excuses for missed visits. She told that once, her daughter asked if Dad had passed away because he was gone for so long. Christine's voice cracked. She gazed at the judge, crying. "I didn't poison them against him. He made himself the villain." The courtroom fell silent. Even Kody seemed shaken. Christine's lawyer asked if she had proof of attempted visits that were blocked. She did. She had text messages, phone call records, even video messages the kids had sent that had never been opened. The court took another recess. Christine sat down, spent of emotion. Janelle drew closer, grasped her hand. Meri walked over in silence. Behind them Robyn stood and exited the courtroom, not with Kody, by herself. The judge came back and finally addressed the envelope. She said the message had been serious, painful, that the words written by the child had been blunt and straightforward. They feared Kody, and they didn't want to testify in court, but they did want the judge to hear what life was like behind closed doors. Christine closed her eyes. Janelle held her breath. Meri gazed down. Kody shook his head and leaned away from his attorney. Robyn was nowhere to be found. The judge said she would be ordering a review by Child Protective Services, and until the investigation was over, shared custody would be put on ice. Nobody moved. Then a cry filled the room. It came from the corridor. A child had fainted outside. One of the daughters. Panic broke out. Court officers ran out. Christine leapt up from her chair. The hearing was suspended. But the battle had already started, and it was only going to deteriorate from here. Antiseptic and government-brewed coffee hung in the air of the hallway outside the courtroom. Christine was cramped up against the chilled wall, while medics knelt alongside her daughter, who trembled on the courthouse floor. Her breathing shallow and frantic, like a hummingbird fluttering against glass. The girl's face was white, eyes wide with terror, but fixed on Christine like a lifeline. Christine fell to her knees and grasped her daughter's hand in both her hands, whispering calming things, brushing hair out of her face, anchoring her the way a mother could. A court officer touched Christine's shoulder gently, instructing her to move back for the paramedics. Christine would not move. Not until her daughter nodded. Not until her lips mouthed. Okay. Only then did Christine rise slowly, arms shaking as she backed away. Janelle and Meri had caught up by then. The three women stood together, their bond not one of strategy or retribution, but of plain maternal instinct. Whatever separated them in the past, bitterness, distance, betrayal, now dissipated in the common anguish of seeing a child disintegrate under the pressures of this conflict. Within the courtroom, the judge waited. The gallery murmured. Kody sat woodenly, his mouth compressed into a line so thin it appeared that he had forgotten how to speak. His attorney leaned forward close, telling him something in hushed tones. Kody didn't react. When Christine arrived, her shoulders were slumped as if she was carrying the world. The clerk told the judge the child was stable, being removed for medical observation. The judge nodded gravely, then addressed the room again. The second witness to be called was also surprising. A school counselor who had known several children from the Brown family over the years. She came in nervously, clutching a slim folder. Her eyes darted around the room, settling on Kody, then Christine, then returning to the judge. She was sworn, then posed a single question. What concerns, if any, have been brought to your attention regarding Mr. Brown's behavior as a parent? The woman paused, then opened the folder. She described several incidents, anonymous to begin with, in which children had voiced fear of getting in trouble with dad, of saying the wrong thing, or making him mad. She described patterns of behavior consistent with trauma reaction. She spoke of an incident when one of the children, then just 8 years old, had made a picture in school with 3 houses, all with smiling moms, and one dark figure with a red face standing outside. The child was asked who that was, and he replied, "That's Daddy when he's mad." Kody fidgeted in his seat, twitching jaw. His lawyer objected to hearsay. The judge overruled. Then the counselor uttered something that struck the room like a thunderclap. One of the kids had informed her they had begun stashing food in their backpack, not out of hunger, but out of fear of being sent to live with dad, and not knowing if there would be dinner. Kody sat up suddenly. The courtroom murmured. His attorney pulled on his sleeve, hissing for him to be seated. The judge warned him stridently. Kody resumed his seat, seething, color rising in his face. Christine dabbed away tears. Janelle clenched her teeth, fists at her sides. Meri just stared straight ahead, unable to look at him anymore. The counselor descended, her voice quivering as she thanked the judge. Her hands shook as she clasped her folder against her chest, as though it held not paper but burden she hadn't intended to bear. Then came Janelle's turn. She moved deliberately, slowly, like a woman not in search of vengeance, but answers. Sworn in, she moved the microphone aside, and glared at no one in general. Directly above the judge's head, where her attention would not be diverted, she testified to years of half-married, half-alone existence, of preparing dinner while Kody remained in another residence, sometimes weeks at a time, of struggling to maintain a routine, from house to house so the children could spend time with their father, only for him to cancel and cancel again, of not crying when the children asked if he even knew their birthdays. She didn't shout, she didn't weep, but her voice only cracked once. When my son graduated, she said, he didn't even ask if Kody was going to be there. He just said, let's not invite him. He won't attend. The court was still. Kody averted his gaze. Janelle went on. She explained that she had attempted for years to maintain the illusion of family together. For the kids, for the cameras, for herself. But the pieces were all cardboard. And now that they were wet and crumbling, Kody wanted to tape them back together. With officialdom. She glared at the judge. He doesn't want to raise them. He wants to own them. The judge remained silent. Her pen clicked softly on her notepad. Then came the call. No one anticipated. The judge asked to see a sealed document, a CPS file. The people in the courtroom stopped in their tracks. The clerk walked to the bench, passing over a thin manila folder. The judge opened it and read in silence for a minute. That seemed like 10. She then closed it, placed it on the bench, and asked Kody to step back down onto the stand. He walked more slowly this time, less self-assured, more deliberate. The judge wanted to know if he knew that a CPS investigation had been initiated about an incident 2 years earlier. Kody blinked. He did not respond at once, then replied yes, but that it had been dismissed. The judge nodded, then said, the dismissal was on grounds of absence of physical evidence.
not on grounds of lack of concern. Kody did not respond. The judge leaned forward. "Did you know," she said slowly, "that one of your children asked for therapy after saying they were fearful of speaking to you?" Beat of silence. Then Kody spoke up. "They're kids. They say things." Christine stood. The courtroom gasped again. Her attorney reached for her, but she moved forward. "No," she quivered. "They said things because they were never allowed to speak when he was around." The judge motioned for her to sit. Christine paused, then complied. Janelle wiped tears from her eyes.
Meri looked at Kody as if she didn't know him anymore. Outside, a storm began. Rain pattered gently on the high courthouse windows, each drop a ticking clock, counting down to something none of them could foresee. Kody glanced at the judge, then around the room, and then back at the row of children in the back. One had his head bowed, another turned away, and then there was one more, a teenager, looking straight at him, and slowly shaking their head. Kody had opened his mouth to speak again, but the judge shut him down. "Thank you, Mr. Brown. That will be all for today." The courtroom cleared slowly. Christine left, shoulders shaking, face buried behind her hair. Janelle trailed behind, her hand on her belly, deep breathing. Meri remained, long enough to lean over and whisper to Kody as she walked by. "You always said they were your children, but you forgot they were our children first." And then she left. Kody sat still, alone, not because he lost, but because the war he began was turning against him. Rain dripped down the glass of the courthouse in small tears that would not fall all at once. Within, the fluorescent lights above the courtroom struggled to glow, humming the low hum of fluorescent exhaustion. It seemed as though even the building felt what was to come. Something weighty, something piercing, something that would not soon be forgotten when spoken. Christine sat in the front, now, eyes ahead, fingers intertwined so hard the knuckles appeared bruised. Janelle next to her, shoulders set, lips pressed thin. Meri sat as far down as possible, expressionless. They were tense with each other, but united. They weren't talking, but they didn't have to. They were waiting. Kody came alone. Robyn was not with him. He straightened his jacket and took a seat, casting a quick glance around the room before dropping his eyes. The assurance he had brought with him to session 1 was now absent, replaced by something more indescribable. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps it was that slow-coming awareness that control, once held so securely in his grasp, was escaping his fingers. The judge brought the room to order. A new witness was summoned, the assigned CPS investigator. She entered with a binder hugged to her side, and a look that told her she'd seen too much for too long. The courtroom leaned forward when she sat at the witness stand. Even the press gallery ceased writing. Once she was sworn in, the judge turned to Christine's attorney. "Please proceed." The woman opened her binder and started. She recounted the timeline. 2 years ago, following an anonymous tip, a file was opened involving allegations of emotional distress and potential neglect related to the Brown household. Specifically, concerns about behavior witnessed during Kody's custody visits. She explained that the case was closed, not because the problems were solved, but because the child in question would not talk. She glanced out over the courtroom as she spoke, and one of the older children in the audience dipped their head. Kody's lawyer objected, but the judge brushed it aside. The CPS investigator went on. She told of a particular incident, one with a child who allegedly locked themselves in a closet for 3 hours after a fight with Kody. When asked why, the child allegedly replied, "He gets loud when he's mad. I didn't want him to see me cry." The courtroom stilled. Christine gripped her hands tighter. Janelle sat rigidly forward, a vein throbbing in her temple. Meri blinked, slowly as if her body didn't have any other idea what to do. Kody breathed through his nose and gazed down at his lap. He didn't protest. He didn't even twitch. The CPS investigator then displayed a sealed manila envelope. She said it was therapy notes from a licensed child psychologist. She told him the child had finally opened up through counseling, and with their consent, the contents were brought to court under seal. The judge took the envelope gingerly, set it beside her, and nodded. Then asked a soft-spoken question. Did the child indicate fear of physical harm? The investigator hesitated, then replied, "No physical harm, a beat, but profound emotional anguish." The child described having recurrent nightmares of being removed from their mother, of being silenced, of not knowing what it feels like to be hugged without fear. Christine shut her eyes. Janelle's shoulders quivered. Kody sat impassive, unmoved. The judge addressed him. Mr. Brown, she said, would you like to respond? Kody rose slowly. He fidgeted with his jacket once more, but his hands were trembling. He walked to the stand, and for the first time he didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was tight. This is a campaign. They're turning the kids against me. The judge didn't respond. Kody's voice rose. They've alienated them, fed them lies. I've loved those children since birth. Mr. Brown, the judge interrupted. This is not about your feelings. It's about theirs. Kody clenched his fist. He opened his mouth, then stopped. His attorney huddled beside him, whispering urgently. He waved her off. They're making me sound like some kind of monster, he said more loudly. As if I was ever not there. As if I didn't comfort them when they were ill. As if I didn't give. As if I didn't love them. The judge spoke a bit louder. Mr. Brown, I kept this family alive for decades. Now the courtroom was completely quiet. Even the security officers by the door took a step forward. Kody bashed his hand on the bench in front of him, and that was the end. The judge rose to her feet. Court officers moved towards him. You are excused, she said icily. Do not speak loudly in this court again. Kody's eyes flew around wildly, like he'd just been awakened from a dream, and didn't appreciate what he saw. He sat down heavily, gasping. Christine didn't even glance at him. Janelle dabbed a tear from her cheek. Meri muttered something under her breath, too softly for anyone to catch. The judge continued speaking. This court is imposing a temporary restriction on Mr. Brown's contact with minor children, without supervision pending complete review of the psychological report and therapist testimony. Gasp filled the room. Kody's attorney stood up. Your Honor, the judge raised a hand. The court has reason to believe that continuation of such access may cause further emotional harm. That is not a risk I'm willing to take today. And then the final moment came. The judge opened a different envelope. It was the letter. The one that had been quietly delivered in session 1. She did not read it aloud, but she held it up. This letter, she indicated, from a child too terrified to testify, will be sealed unless otherwise ordered. But I will tell you something. It talks of fear, not simply of abandonment, but of presence. And that, Mr. Brown, could be the most damning testimony of all. Kody's eyes glazed over. He didn't say a word. For the first time he had no defense, no smile, no performance, only silence. As court recessed for the day, Christine stood first, then Janelle, then Meri. They didn't wait for the reporters. They didn't talk to the cameras. They walked out like people who survived a fire, burned, but alive. Kody sat still, quiet, alone. And outside, Robyn sat on the courthouse steps, her face buried in her hands, sobbing, not for what they lost, but perhaps because at last she saw what had always been broken. The courthouse seemed different that morning. The air was chillier, quieter, as if the building itself held its breath. Security was more stringent. Journalists huddled behind barricades outside, aware that the tale had changed, that something was on its way, something greater than custody documents and court files. The benches were packed inside. Even the court staff moved slightly more slowly, eyes attuned. Everyone was waiting for the time that had long been in the making. Meri Brown came first. She wasn't accompanied by lawyers or hanging on the others, as she had done at previous hearings. She walked alone, wearing black, hair pulled back, face washed. She didn't wave, didn't nod, simply walked and sat down. And while she remained silent, the quiet in her orbit increased. Christine and Janelle were there before long. They sat next to her. No one said a word, but their proximity after all of it spoke louder than any words ever could. Kody arrived minutes later, face pale, jaw clenched. He didn't glance at the gallery, didn't glance at the wives, just looked straight ahead, as if by not acknowledging them all, he could somehow still pretend he was in control of the story. The judge seated herself. The room settled, and then the moment Christine's lawyer stood. Your Honor, she explained, we would like to call Meri Brown to the stand. The room came to an uneasy standstill. Even the clerk hesitated before committing it to writing. Kody finally met her eyes for the first time. A flash of puzzlement crossed his features, then discomfort. Meri rose slowly, as if years were falling away with each pace. She took the oath, sat down, adjusted the microphone with careful deliberation, and then, in a firm voice, began. She didn't begin by accusing. She began with history, with the day she wedded Kody, with visions of a great family, of love and countless offspring. With promises that were made prior to the cameras ever rolling, she drew a picture not of resentment, but of faith. How she had faith in him, faith in polygamy, faith in unison, faith in him as a father. And then, gradually, as the paint was stripped from a once forgotten wall, she started to tell the fissures. She testified about nights she lay awake, wondering if Kody would arrive, of birthdays that were missed, of conversations that became chilly, of kids who used to run to the door when he came home, but no longer even got up. She informed the judge, when Kody had threatened to take away her son if she ever left. He told me, "Don't push me, Meri. I know how to make custody work for me." Her tone did not quaver. I took him at his word. That's why I remained for so long. The courtroom buzzed. Kody's lawyer rose to object, but the judge raised her hand. Let her continue. Meri gazed at Kody, then, not angrily, not sadly, clearly, once you said to me that the children would always love you more, because mothers are replaceable and fathers are not. Kody closed his eyes. And I knew then, she said, that you didn't want to be responsible for raising children. You wanted to own them. Her words dropped like rocks into a calm pond, each one creating ripples of shock throughout the room. Christine reached over and took Janelle's hand. Janelle clutched it hard. Meri faced the judge again. I'm not perfect. None of us are. But I saw the kids return from visits with Kody shaking, silent, bewildered. One told me she disliked herself because she wasn't able to please him. Another said he stopped crying because it would not matter anyway. She stopped, then leaned in a little. I remained quiet because I was humiliated. Humiliated that I let it go that far. But I won't remain quiet anymore. She dug into her purse, produced a letter. It was old, creased, corners frayed. This, she said, holding it aloft, is a letter I wrote to myself when he left the last time. I never intended to read it, but I believe the court can hear what living in fear and silence is like. The judge nodded. Meri unfolded the page and read. It was brief, painful, and raw. I sit here trying to figure out why I wasn't good enough. Why my son refused to talk about his father anymore. Why I began marking down the days that Kody wasn't home, rather than the days that he was. I don't know how to repair what shattered. I don't know how to continue pretending. But I do know that love shouldn't hurt like forgetfulness. She folded the paper, placed it in front of her, and looked at the judge. I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for peace. When she stepped down, the silence that followed wasn't just stunned, it was sacred. Kody shifted in his seat, visibly rattled. His attorney whispered again, now more urgently, but the power had left his corner of the room. The judge called a recess, and as the courtroom cleared, Robyn showed up in the hallway. She passed by the press, by the lawyers, and straight up to Christine. I need to see the judge, she whispered. There's something no one is aware of. Christine looked at her. So did Janelle. Meri moved forward. What is it? She asked. Robyn glanced away. I didn't sign everything willingly, she breathed. He coerced me. About the guardianship document, he said, just in case. Christine's breath caught. Janelle's eyes widened. Meri stepped back. The judge returned. The courtroom filled again. And Robyn, eyes puffed from crying, took the stand. Kody didn't move. He sat in stunned silence, witnessing it all fall apart. Because now even Robyn was turning, and the ground he had laid was going to crumble under its own deceptions. Robyn perched in the witness stand, like a woman fraying before your very eyes. Her palms shook a little as she fiddled with the microphone, her tone barely audible. The courtroom, just a moment before filled with murmurs and creaking bodies, was now silent, as if the whole room leaned in unison. She looked at Kody once. He didn't return the glance. He sat rigid, jaw set, looking straight ahead as if he could will this moment away. If he just refused to accept it. I didn't realize what I was signing, she said hesitantly. He said it was just paperwork, a formality, a precaution. The judge's brow furrowed. What kind of paperwork? Mrs. Brown? Robyn swallowed hard. Her hands gripped the edge of the stand. A guardianship document. It granted him authority over the children. All the children, not only mine. Gasps spread throughout the courtroom. Christine leapt up from her seat. Janelle's mouth opened in shock. Meri muttered, "No," under her breath. Robyn went on. He said it was to keep them safe. If something happened, if the mothers attempted to do anything drastic. He said courts don't want unstable homes, and that this would provide him with bargaining power to keep things in check. The judge moved forward. Did you sign it on your own free will? Robyn hesitated. I did not say no, but it did not feel like a choice. The judge asked for the paper. Christine's lawyer rose. He have a copy. It was presented into evidence straight away. A court clerk transported the file to the judge's bench as if it were radioactive. The judge opened the folder. The courtroom observed her eyes scan line by line. Then her expression shifted. From expressionless to strained, she gazed up at Kody. Mr. Brown, why was this document never disclosed to the court? Kody got up slowly, readjusting his tie. Once more, that same maroon tie from session 1. But now it did not exude confidence. It revealed desperation. I didn't think it was relevant, he stated matter-of-factly. You didn't think a legally enforceable guardianship awarding you unilateral parental rights over children of broken marriages was relevant. Kody's mouth opened, then closed. The judge wasn't finished. Nowhere on any of those papers did it say, Private Family Court in Arizona. This document was notarized, signed, and filed in a private family court in Arizona. 2 months before your first custody filing in this courtroom. Christine gasped. Janelle clasped the chair to hold herself up. Meri stood up, stepped back, and sat back down again, shocked. Kody remained silent. Christine stood up, her words shaking with rage. He schemed this out. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. The judge insisted on order, and Christine sat once more, quivering. Robyn stayed at the stand. Her face was white, her features pinched. I should have spoken out earlier, she whispered. I did not know how far he was going to push it. The judge addressed Kody once more. Why did you ask for this document, Mr. Brown? I felt the children needed structure. One legal guardian. I did not trust the climate they were in. Too much change. Too much inconsistency. The judge glared. Or too much freedom. He winced. And then she dropped the bomb. Nobody anticipated. This court is issuing an emergency restraint on all legal rights previously accorded to Mr. Brown through the guardianship order, effective immediately. Kody's eyes expanded. His attorney protested. The judge cut him off. I will not allow a document born out of coercion and secrecy to be the foundation for parental authority. Then she looked back at Robyn. I appreciate your honesty. Robyn nodded slowly, but the damage had already been done. Outside the courtroom, Christine was pacing in the hallway. Her attorney came out, face grim. There's more, she said softly. We just obtained access to a bank transfer associated with the guardianship filing. A legal fee, paid out of a private trust. Fee, paid out of a private trust, under one name. Christine blinked. Whose? The lawyer hesitated. Kody's father. Christine took a step back. What does that mean? We don't know yet. But it appears this was not Kody's first attempt to seek legal control of family assets. Christine turned back toward the courtroom, her voice soft, almost to herself. He learned it somewhere. Inside, the judge had requested closing argument, not because the trial was over but because the direction had careened awry. Kody's lawyer refused to speak. Christine's lawyer rose and stated succinctly, what started as a father wanting custody has turned into a case of legal manipulation, lies, and control. The children are not objects. They are individuals. And individuals should have the right to feel safe. The judge nodded. Tomorrow, she said, the court will hear the final witness. The one voice that's kept silent, until now. The entire room froze. Janelle whispered, the letter? The judge nodded. The author of the letter will be here. They've requested to present it personally, unread, unopened. The courtroom hummed with activity. Kody appeared punched in the chest. Christine sat down, shocked. Janelle took her hand. Meri gazed ahead, her eyes fixed on some far-off point, as though attempting to ready her heart for what it already knew would be painful. And Robyn alone in the back row, no longer covering for Kody, no longer struggling, merely watching, waiting, as the rest of them, because the next voice they would hear wasn't from the past, it was the voice of the future, and it was going to talk. The hallway was still that morning, not a peace-filled quiet, but a quiet that precedes something heavy falling. A whispered tension curled from the front of the courthouse up the staircase and into the courtroom, where folks were already seated, waiting, whispering, watching the clock. Christine sat in the front, back straight, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She hadn't slept. Janelle hadn't either. Meri sat between them, motionless, intent, her gaze never leaving the double doors at the rear of the courtroom. They all knew what was about to happen, and none of them were prepared. The judge appeared unannounced. The clerk had barely a chance to stand before she signaled to start. "We will continue with the last voice in this case," said the judge gently. "The child whose letter was read privately has asked to submit it personally." The court allowed this in protective conditions. A door opened by the side of the courtroom. A child services woman emerged first, then a teenaged boy, backpack low on his back, fists clenched over the straps so hard they were white. The kid took a look around, just briefly, at the judge, at the lawyers, at the spectators, at Kody, and then their eyes were on Christine, and didn't budge. Christine wiped at tears. Janelle covered her mouth with her hand, stifling a gasp. The teenager did not utter a sound, just kept moving forward slowly, step after step, until they stood in front of the judge's bench. They dug into their bag and retrieved an envelope. The same envelope that had been cited, mentioned, whispered about, but never opened. They laid it on the bench, then glanced up at the judge. "Read it," they said. Their tone was quiet, uncertain, but unshaking. The judge nodded. She folded the letter and opened it carefully, reading silently. The courtroom didn't breathe, not even Kody. The judge's gaze crept, line by line, and with each passing second, something shifted in her expression. Softer, sadder, and then something deeper. A sort of sorrow that isn't born of surprise, but of comprehension. When she finished, she folded the letter once more, and laid it flat on the desk. She turned to the child. "Would you like me to read it out loud?" she asked. The child shook their head. "No, I just wanted you to know." And they turned, and walked past the bench, past the attorneys, past the mothers, and straight for Kody. The room was silent. They stopped in front of him, fixed him in the eyes, and said, "You used to be my hero." Kody blinked, and then the child threw in, "But heroes don't make you feel invisible." They turned and walked away. No tears, no drama, just truth and absence. Christine wept soundlessly, hand over mouth. Janelle looked into her lap, eyes red. Meri closed her eyes, lips tightly pressed together. Kody stared down at his hands. They were shaking. He curled them into a fist and squeezed, as if in attempting to feel something through skin and bone that had previously been numb for so long. The judge said nothing immediately. She allowed the silence to speak on her behalf. And then she opened the envelope, cradled it in her hands, and spoke softly. "This letter will be sealed, but it has already done what it came here to do." She regarded Kody. "There is no court order that can fix what that child wrote, and no testimony that can erase what they've endured." Christine's attorney rose slowly. "Your Honor, based on this testimony, we move for immediate permanent custody, to stay with the biological mothers, with limited access to Mr. Brown under supervision only." Kody's attorney began to open his mouth, but Kody held up a hand, stopping him. He rose, and for the first time he didn't defend himself. He simply said, "I didn't think they hated me." Christine also stood. "They don't hate you," she said softly. "They just stopped waiting for you to arrive." The courtroom didn't explode. It didn't need to. The storm was no longer outside. It had moved through all of them, washed across them, and left only what could not be washed away. The judge asked for one last recess, before the verdict would be drawn up. Christine went outside, the sun on her face like she hadn't experienced it in weeks. Janelle trailed behind, folding her arms across her chest. Meri stood alone by the door, then descended the stairs slowly, each step lighter than the last. Robyn said nothing. She just sat in the hallway, arms around knees, gently rocking back and forth. In the courtroom, Kody stayed behind, alone, wearing his suit still, wearing the maroon tie still. But something in him had finally yielded. His shoulders fell forward. His hands were clasped together, but no longer struggling to retain, just stationary. And in some place in the rear of the building, there was a child sitting by a window, sketching a picture in a sketchbook, not of a courtroom, or a judge or a father, but of a house, with one door, and no shadows whatsoever. This part provides resolution, hands down the verdict, and gives the audience a memorable emotional conclusion, with a built-in natural call to action at the end, too, based on viewer comments, just like you asked for.
It continues the cinematic, voiceover type narration, with no breaks, no headings, and full emotional continuity. The last morning was quiet, not tense the way it had been previously, not electric and full of secrets, but quiet in that weighty way. Morning rests after the last argument. The courthouse wasn't as crowded anymore. The media still lingered outside, but their cameras were sluggish, their queries distant. The spectacle was over. What was left was judgment. Christine sat quietly inside, not trembling anymore, not pacing, just still, like a person who'd finally exhausted herself. Not because she'd quit, but because she'd finally said it all. Janelle next to her had one hand on her knee, holding herself in place for whatever came next. Meri, hands clasped in her lap, eyes straight ahead, face a mask. They had arrived alone, but they were exiting this courtroom as something other than wives, or enemies, or even friends, but survivors of the same tempest. Kody sat by himself at his table. He wasn't in the maroon tie anymore. A simple plain gray shirt, crease, collar open. The judge came in. No one stood, not even out of disrespect, just out of exhaustion. She sat down, pushed her glasses up, and gazed at the individuals in front of her. Then she began to speak. This court has spent the last few weeks hearing testimony, documents, legal pleadings, sealed psychological reports, and direct statements of the minor children in this case. She paused, gazed down, then went on. In that time, it has become painfully obvious that the issue before this court is not one of mere custody. It is one of control, of identity, of children being caught in the middle of emotional fractures too deep to ignore. Christine's fingers closed around the edge of her seat. Janelle didn't blink. Meri sat frozen in place. The judge went on. Mr. Kody Brown's effort to gain sole legal custody of children from all previous marriages was not motivated by safety, but by strategy. It was a bid to regain control over people he no longer had emotional access to. Kody shut his eyes. This court does not reward coercion. It does not approve of manipulation, and it does not turn its back on the whispers of quiet children who are too afraid to speak. She reached for a document. This court hereby grants permanent full custody of all minor children to their respective biological mothers, Christine Brown, Janelle Brown, and Meri Brown. Christine let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Janelle looked down, covering her face. Meri's eyes shimmered, but she did not cry. The judge wasn't finished. In addition, Mr. Brown will be kept from unsupervised contact with any minor child in this case. Future visits will need to be court-approved, supervised and requested by the child, not the parent. Kody's face dropped. He didn't protest. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. Once. The judge looked down again. One last thing, she said, her voice gentler now. This court heard from a child. A letter never intended to be read out loud, but its effect was deep. It reminded all of us that custody is not about forms. It's about being there, keeping safe, at peace. She replaced the letter in its folder, then looked up. Those children didn't need one parent to win. They needed all the adults in their lives to stop making them the prize in a battle. She stood. Court was adjourned. The gavel was softer this time. Not final, just sufficient. The room didn't explode. There was no screaming, no joy, just silence. Christine stood, then Janelle, then Meri. They didn't embrace, didn't weep. They merely looked at one another, and nodded, and filed out, together. Kody remained seated. His attorney gathered up next to him, rushing to be gone. But Kody didn't budge. He gazed at where the judge was, where the child had stood, where Robyn had sat. Once anyway, now vacant. He pulled out a creased photograph from his jacket, and unfolded it. A family portrait, an old one, from years past, before the cracks, before the courts, before the children no longer ran toward him. He gazed at it, then slowly returned it to his pocket, and exited the side door. Alone. Outside, the sun was high. Christine stepped out first, the light meeting her eyes like pardon. Janelle followed, hugging her coat close, drawing in as if she finally could breathe out. Meri stood there for a second, then walked by the reporters, by the cameras, by the courthouse steps, and into the street where her car was parked. No statements were made, no interview. They didn't owe anybody anything anymore, not even him. And somewhere far from courtrooms and verdicts, a child sat in a quiet room, drawing again. This time, a picture of a home, with open windows, music in the air, and 3 women standing tall, and no one chasing them. Just the kind of peace they'd always wanted. The kind that didn't need a gavel to prove it existed. The type that finally was like freedom. And now that you've witnessed the full truth, ask us, what would you have done if your kid gave the judge a letter like that? Do you think the judge made the right decision? Let us know in the comments. Because this story, it's not about one courtroom. It's about every voice that didn't stay silent.